Hi, beautiful beings of light. This is Yana, and welcome to my YouTube channel in the month of April of 2022. And we have this very powerful energies of the Easter, right? Resurrection. I'm the life, I'm the resurrection, I'm the light of this world. And for me, it was, resurrecting all the energies that have been stolen from us, right? And receiving all the light codes from the gamma rays frequencies, having all these updates and upgrades. And so, the whole Sunday morning, right, the light activation unity meditation with Sandra Walter, we had the resurrection codes transmission happening from Enrita Melchizedek as well. So I was in extremely high places and spaces. I can't even describe that. But then, I have to go to my body, and I have to do also physical material world, like meeting people, people from work, and also people from Eastern Europe, actually, Polish people who live in New York. So they came down here for vacation. So some of them can finally cleanse themselves from all this, right? So we'll talk about that. Because my main topic and some subjects will be all about like the mind control, right? Especially in the military. I mean, what happened with the Project Paperclip, right? The negative aliens, the negative alien agenda, right? Those who are mystics or highly evolved souls, right? We come here to pretty much dive deep into the darkness, see what's going on, resurrect all these energies, or transform all these energies, right? And all the correction has to happen. And so we have to bring everything right side up. Everything is been inverted, perverted, degraded, right? And reversed, right? So everything's like really zero common sense. Nothing makes sense for us, those who understand energies. Again, understand my videos are not for everybody. It's those who are on the Ascension path, who are highly evolved souls, right? Empath sensitives, starseeds, indigo warriors. My project is for spiritual warriors. I mean, how to become spiritual warrior again, the defender of truth, right? So that's why, my project is for warriors and for military, for veterans of the younger generation. Okay, this is my soul siblings, my tribe. So that's kind of where the information is going to be circled around. And so only take what resonates with you and leave the rest, right? So, and of course, it has to do with super soldier programs and all these things that have been happening in underground military bases, those covert operation, right? I'm part of the, I experienced, or, the psyops, right? The men in black, and, how they are pretty much playing, or they are actually abusing the power in the military, right? They have all this technology. They're messing up with your genes, doing all kinds of experimentations, right? They wanted to make Marine out of me. Actually, I look like a Marine, right? All these surgeries happening in the astral plane. So without my permission, in a way, I mean, I agreed to do that for my soul tribe, my soul group, who ended up in the military, and horrible, brutal things happen to them. Okay, so we need to again claim our power back, right? Command our space, resurrect all these energies, especially from Atlantis, from Lemuria, the ancient Egypt, from all these golden ages, as we are entering slowly but surely the new golden age in Aquarius. Okay, and we are bringing the divine justice back online as we're implementing the Galactic Codex. We are now under the natural laws. Okay, and the new jurisdiction, okay, that's kind of forming, and things are changing. Here's the great awakening, the shift in consciousness, right? The planet is ascending, we're ascending, so important to activate your DNA. So again, we can make this world a better place. We can finally co-create a beautiful life in this new reality, new earth, right? The 5D paradigm, or they call it 5D earth and beyond, for those who are the star seeds and ascended masters. And I have deep connection with the solar rishis, or rishi sages of the Himalayan mountains. and the Great White Brotherhood and the Galactic Command, and of course Arstar and the Arstar Command, the Pleiadians. Okay, they kind of helped me to assemble this body, also in the physical plane, or assemble this hologram. There's all this technology, the hyperspace hologram, and you guys, it's a very intricate technology that is hundreds, thousand years in the future. But at the same time, the planet already had this kind of technology, right? So we are actually resurrecting the ancient past, all these ancient times that happen. Okay, it's like, so then here in a present moment, we can start making those changes. Okay, because we are the change makers, right? We're the system busters, the renegades. And this is the second coming of the Christ, the inner Christ, right? Resurrecting, the divine spark that is within us, and the energies, right? The energies of the divinity that is within that sacred chamber of our heart. So, my story. I know so many people believe that, even my friends, that somebody died on a cross, and that's the resurrection of that individual, Yeshua, right? And he died for our sins. No, we all create our karma. So that's why very important to watch our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and our deeds, because we are the creators of our reality. We're co-creating our reality with the divine, right? With high energy frequency of thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and even deeds and actions. Okay, well, if we, there's a fluctuation happening, right? If we create it with a negative ego, now what goes around comes around, guys. And yesterday, the Sunday in the afternoon, I had to actually eat something that was against my will. That individual knows that, but I had to be kind of nice, it's the boss. So, but I could just see people who are more aligning with the Ascension, and just people who are avoiding this and blocking themselves from this new realities, new energies, new way of thinking, new way of feelings, right? I can see also people who, chose the 3D and the whole money structure, and, the reversals, because it's comfortable. That's what people know. And also people who are on medication, right? I can see how they are disconnected. Their mind, actually, they're stuck in that ego mind, 3D ego mind, or in those 4D density. It's very heavy density. The fluctuation, the people are lost and confused. They're actually full of fear, because the inner work, guys, now is the most important thing. Staying in your heart, loving yourself, taking care of yourself, forgiving yourself, and be compassionate with everything that happened to us. Like, even the brutality and the torture and the rape, the satanic ritual abuses, right? Because we have to hold the light. Those are the planetary healers and spiritual warriors, right? All these children that incurred all these horrible things, right? We have to be here to take care of them. And I'm here to also help the veterans and my soul group to get back on track, get their spirituality going. They have to transmute the shadow body. That was the mind altering substances, right? The rape, the brutality, the nanotechnology, all kinds of inserts and holographic inserts and chips, right? In very important chakras. Let me see. There's the medulla oblongata, actually. That's behind the neck, right? It's a receiver of cosmic energies. So those guys ended up in the electrostatic bodies running the reversals. It means those are anti-life, anti-Christ, anti-human codes with horrible psychological problems, right? Or being dysfunctional mentally, emotionally, even physically. And of course, they have no access to their spiritual energies, because even their DNA has been hijacked, compromised. With the crisp technology in military, they do horrible experimentation. It's all going to divine justice. And of course, we'll have to talk about it again. Let me see, where are my papers? That's going to be the mind control gene expression. I have to go over it again, because like I said, those beautiful people, right, in New York, even though some of them, spiritual, they have, because you live there, what do? They kind of were pressured, right? And very, very, highly evolved young lady. So I can see how, continuing with my videos and with my mission, what I do, because this is going to be the thing, the exploring the whole mind control agenda with Kathy O'Brien, right? The PTSD Time to Heal, and her book Transformation of America, with insider and neuroscientist Mark Phillips. These things, the whole military covert operations, slowly but surely, you have to be very careful, right? But this all needs to come to the light. Everything needs to come to the light. We're shining the light, right? We're the column of light shining bright, so the truth can be revealed, right? We're like our frequency vibration extremely high, because only the truth will set you free. And studying universal laws, well, like I said, we are now under the law of one, cosmic 7 law. Extremely important to know that, to understand that. Those who want to help with the Ascension, with humanitarian projects, right? We will need these people who already are, who already process all this information. And the polarity integration, extremely important. Working on our shadow, transforming, transmuting, all that, right? Means we have to acknowledge first our shadow and of our ancestors, right? That's the pain body, that's the trauma. We've all been programmed, we've all been mind controlled. So there's no reason to hide it and shove it under the carpet. Now with all these light codes and the plasma light frequencies and solar flares, everything is surfacing. I mean, it's going to be visible, right? It's going to be right here in front of our eyes. We have to deal with that first on our personal level, and ancestral level. So then we can, of course, deal with the shit of government, the shit of military, all the criminal activities, atrocities that now it's all transpiring, right? Has to be brought to divine justice. So again, the divine intervention, the Galactic Codex implementation, understanding, knowing the natural laws, the universal laws for the new earth jurisdiction, right? Of the 5D of the new earth, right? Because we're going quantum, we're going interstellar, we're going galactic. And, it's the unity, right? In their diversity from those higher perspectives, even though here, we're still dealing with polarity and people who are negatively polarized, and we're still dealing with those kind of the mind control, the agendas, the separation, conquer and divide, and power over others, and jealousy, envy, and greed, right? And here people were programmed, just trust the government. Government is the best thing for you. Well, trust God that is within you, okay? So don't give away your power. And that's how kind of what happened with humanity, right? Children giving their power to their parents, or to the system, right? To school. And the society, to the society, and it's all been running reversals and been mind controlled, and all this poison everywhere, in the food, in the soil, in the air, in the atmosphere, and just disconnecting us from our true divine essence, who we truly are, the angelic divine luminous beings with 12 strands of DNA, right? With the crystal heart, the crystal technology, that's our DNA. We're the bioquantum crystalline technology. We're the spacecraft, we're the spaceship, we're the ETs, okay? And the plasma light body, okay? So that's how we connect to the universe, and we communicate with other star systems and galaxies, because the divine angelic human beings, right, were designed in a very special way, having a direct connection to God, to source here in this physical realm. Not everybody had this kind of the privilege, or this kind of opportunity. Not each race can do that. But unfortunately, because of the galactic wars, electric wars, and 1,000 wars, and then the infiltration and mutation of our DNA, and then, I already mentioned what happened after World War II, right? You had the Project Paperclip, so it means the Nazis, whether scientists or the criminals, they came over here to United States, infiltrated the entire infrastructure with this whole mind control and military operation, all in secrets. Then you had the treaties with the Grace, right, with the Orion group, pretty much trading highly advanced technology for human DNA, abduction, and breeding, and DNA mutation. okay, and stealing our resources from this planet. So so you know where I'm coming from. So you see the drill. I've been talking about it all the time. So it's time to really educate yourself and know what's what really happened. And then we have the Armageddon programming. I mean, the pestilence programming, right? That it started then in 2001, and because we were supposed to be in an ascended way, but the Ascension plan number 1 didn't succeed. It was aborted. So we have the Ascension plan B, right? It's all about Ascension, doing the inner work. So I have the Ascension Guardian Protocol, right? I can go over that, or what we have been talking about it for quite some time. So that's going to be very important. This is for the new earth, and to ascend, to transcend, to heal, to transform, and to live in abundance, right? To live in abundance, meet our star family, our galactic family, to travel interstellarly, okay, and join the galactic community, the galactic society. That's going to be the reality, the bright future of the bright future, not the doom and gloom. That's another timeline. That's the Armageddon timeline. And I wanted to mention that after that treaty, then you have the corporations, right, being established or were established, all these interplanetary conglomerates, corporations, and the secret space program, especially of the negative faction, and the military industrial complex, right, the military extraterrestrial complex. So they had all this technology, right? The government received all the technology, and for free, and just the treaty agreement. So yeah, you can abduct humans and you can do all kinds of experimentations without our permission and being informed. That's why the Galactic Codex, right? Informed consent. We have the right for all information, but at the same time, it's our responsibility to study all that. Self-study and studying the true divine history is extremely important. What I notice also here, people are so much attached to the external and the technology and who did that, or who is responsible for all these criminal activities. Remember, everything's a reflection of us. If we have a shadow, if we have a pain body, if we're negatively polarized, right? If we're not seeing our blockages, right, in our mind, in our emotional body, in our chakra system, guess what the interpretation is going to be like? That's why for me, what we're focusing on is on yourself, about all understanding self, because from there you can make better judgments, right? You start feeling your true divine nature. You start feeling yourself, you start understanding yourself. Of course, you're asking yourself, who am I? Why did I come here to this planet? What is my mission? What are my gifts and talents so I can be of service? Right? The key to ascent is also how you can help this world, right? Instead of service to self in that selfish, negative way, but first we have to take care of ourselves. So we need to be spiritually selfish. It's going to be service to others, be of service, because so many things have to be corrected. So many things need to be brought to the light, right? And so this is going to be a process, and that's why there are several ascension waves, right? You have the first group, the pioneers, the way showers, being the knower of God. So then we can be the way shower of God, right? There's the unity vow. You can find it on my website, yanakalai.com, with a 12D shield, right? The unity meditation I already mentioned with Sandra Walter. We were celebrating 6 years, the resurrection codes. I mean, the energies, the plasma light frequency, guys, everything is coming to the light. Everything's coming to the surface. So fake it till you make it. It's not going to work. You need to start being truthful to yourself, right? Expressing your truth with loving kindness. We all been dumbed down or programmed, lied to, deceived. Okay? So, being very gentle with ourselves, but at the same time, also become a warrior. I mean, that's kind of my nature, being a warrior, but at the same time, I know I'm of that artistic nature as well. I love beauty. I love arts. And of course, my background is yoga and Ayurveda with Ayurvedic cooking. Tomorrow, actually, those who have Skype, who is interested, I'm going to again talk about, star seeds, and talk about, the diet from Magenta Pixie. And let me see if I did bring it here. So, lessons from Lemuria. And what I noticed with my friends, those who were in New York, highly evolved, they were very open to these kind of teachings. I mean, they already practice, like they make sure they eat good food, good nutrition, healthy, organic, and less meat, while doing detoxing and Epsom salt baths, okay? And being in nature, being on the sun, that's going to be very helpful. So balancing karma through nutrition for ascension, okay? So I'll talk about that. That's going to be tomorrow. And then, next Monday, we'll continue with the Ayurvedic cooking, how to make ghee, or what is ghee, that curry recipe, and let me see. That's going to just pretty much continue from my a previous lecture. I build upon what we already talked about, right? What is Ayurveda? We talk about the three cosmic energies. We talk about 5 elements, 5 platonic solids, 6 tastes, and that's the structure. And that's why, for me, very important to talk about like a structure, a system, organization, and that's the divine architecture. That's the etheric architecture that has the light codes, and the energy runs through it that are Christ-like energies, the Christic spiral, with the instruction sets, right? How to create realities. So the divine architecture, we're the divine architects here, right? Resurrecting the codes of the ancient ones, of the solar rishis, of the Himalayan mountains. So that's where I'm coming from. And of course, I have the Guardian protocol, right, for Ascension. So again, it's for you guys to be inspired and empowered. Know that everything is possible, like everything what happened to humanity is possible, because our star family, galactic family are here. They're helping us with this whole evolution, liberation from the dark forces, with education or re-education, and remembering who we truly are, right? So learning the true galactic cosmic history of the earth, extremely important. But in order to understand all that in a proper way, we have to also do the inner work and work on ourselves. So the mind control gene expression, that's an article, a newsletter from Lisa Rini. And let me see, I have it from September of 2021. And so I'll talk about it again because we had the resurrection of the 5th platonic solid. That's the space, right? That's why the space, air, fire, water, and the earth, right? And so I deal with the invisible world because it's time to really open our third eye, right? The sixth sense, decalcify your pineal gland, drink some distilled water. Okay, I have this purified water right now, but I still have distilled water. Fasting, you know what fasting does for us? I can remind that tomorrow or next Monday about the regenerative things, the effects that happens within our bodies when we are fasting. Of course, I come from a yoga background, so I'm not on medications, I'm not on any drugs, I don't drink, I don't smoke, nothing. And that's why for us, it's extremely important to keep our body clean, our mind clean, emotion clean. And there's lots of discipline, right? Sadhana, spiritual discipline. And it can also, in a way, cost you lots of money because you have to constantly detox, right? You're dealing with people that have entities. Invoking the Vat Flame, Saint Germain, right? I'm a being of Vat fire. I am the purity God desires. Okay, let's just do the Vat Flame Invocation, kind of for our protection, because I'll be reading these things and they're not nice. They can be kind of scary, and you're dealing with military, and so you have to be very careful with that, okay? So, focusing on our breath. The spine is straight, making sure you're in a comfortable position. I bring my hands together in front of my heart chakra. That's the Namaste position. You're integrating your divine feminine with your divine masculine. And of course, it's all about the heart and the higher heart chakra, the 8th chakra. That's the portal to the divine, to those other dimensions, as we are multidimensional beings. While you're breathing, I'm close my eyes. I feel the spot in between my eyebrows. And then with my intention, I go in the middle of the brain, where the pineal gland resides. It's a crystalline technology. It connects you to those higher dimensions. So purification of the mind is extremely important. Deprogramming, right? Rewiring the subconscious mind from all the programming, conditioning, the old habits, old belief system, dogma, trauma. And making sure that you're grounding yourself, whether through your root chakra, first chakra, or through your feet. Just feel the ground, the floor. Just imagine roots coming out of your feet down to the crystal core of Mother Earth. Just feel the connection. The crystal core Mother Earth, the platinum ray, that's the 12th dimension. That's the matrix, the hologram of our planet, Earth, Tara, Gaia. In this 15-dimensional universal time matrix. Just feel the love and protection of Mother Earth, Mother Nature, of Gaia, and all her sentient beings. And just feel those energies and bring those healing energies, loving energies of Mother Earth up into your heart, through your feet, through your root chakra, into your heart. You synchronize the heartbeat with the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And you feel the oneness, the connection, the interconnectedness of all that is. Of course, the tongue is touching the upper palate. Just feel the flow, the circuitry, the meridians, the nadis, the subtle channels, all running smoothly without any blockage. Just feel the circulation of the energies within your body, your aura, your energy field. Mother Earth is supplying with all this infinite energy. Be grateful, be thankful. The help is here. You're being helped, you're being guided, you're being protected, you're being loved. Beloved, I'm presence bright. Round me seal your tube of light. From ascended master flame, call forth now in God's own name. Let it keep my temple free from all discord sent to me. I'm calling forth wildfire to blaze and transmute all desire, keeping on in freedom's name till I'm one with the Vat Flame. Beloved, I'm presence bright. Round me seal your tube of light. From ascended master flame, call forth now in God's own name. Let it keep my temple free from all discord sent to me. I'm calling forth wildfire to blaze and transmute all desire, keeping on in freedom's name till I'm one with the Vat Flame. Beloved, I'm presence bright. Round me seal your tube of light. From ascended master flame, call forth now in God's own name. Let it keep my temple free from all discord sent to me. I'm calling forth wildfire to blaze and transmute all desire, keeping on in freedom's name till I'm one with the Vat Flame. So that's the flame of transformation, transmutation, of freedom, of liberation, of forgiveness. Everything of that old energy, blockages, leaving you, leaving your body, your mind, your emotions. You're transforming, transmuting all that through that wild flame. Just see yourself bathing that energy of that sacred fire. The violet flame. Dissolving all the blockages from your cellular density, from your chakras. Those are vortexes, energy centers. All is being dissolved, transformed, and sent back to source. So everything that stands in our ascension, may it all go. Let go, let God. Very important to surrender to this process, to that source, to your higher self, to all that is. Divine Mother, Holy Mother, our divine parents, Holy Father. And now see the golden crystal diamond light emanating from above. And it's entering your crown chakra, your third eye, your throat chakra, heart chakra, your solar plexus, second chakra, sacral, and your root chakra. It's your first chakra. And you see yourself bathing that cosmic Christ Sophia consciousness. of unconditional love, of pure energy, of innocence. Of beauty. Peace. Balance. Harmony. Unity. Peace on earth. Namaste. So here we go. Here we are. We have the resurrection codes. And very important to build the momentum doing those meditations. Okay. And whatever feels right for you. That's how we raise the frequency vibration, release our trauma, karma, right? Even through nutrition. I'll talk about it tomorrow and the next Monday, of course. And that's how we'll make this world a better place, make America great again. Actually, I'm going to do chanting for New York City because I heard all kinds of interesting or sad stuff happening there. And, you know, of course, those people who live there. So sending prayers, of course, to entire world, to each continent, right, to each country. But and for me especially, whether it's my mission assignment, right, the New York, that energy needs to be transformed, transmuted. And let's do the invocation of the Vat Flame. New York is the city of Vat fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of Vat fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of Vat fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of Vat fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of Vat fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is a city about fire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. New York is the city of wildfire. New York is the purity God desires. Amen. I'm just gonna feel those energies, the powerful energies of that sacred Vat flame. It's encircling you, and as well the state of New York or the city of New York. All those dark energies being transformed, transmuted. All this darkness to leaving the city. Darkness being lifted up so more of that light can come in, can enter the city of New York and the hearts of the New Yorkers. May they feel joy and peace. Peace that passes all understanding. Peace in our hearts, peace in our minds. And in our souls, in our bodies. Amen. Thank you, Saint Germain. So, like a very powerful energies, everything's being amplified. So the work that we do, or everything that we say, everything that we imagine, right? Everything is now amplified. It's or emphasized, so very careful to be aware, right? What we are putting out there, what are we projecting, right? Because everything will come back to us as a boomerang, right? The law of cause and effect, right? What goes around comes around. You guys, now, like I said, we're in this new the yuga, the Satya Yuga, right? That's the eon of truth, right? Only the truth will set us free as we are exiting the Kali Yuga, the darkness, and we're going back into the light, all right? The seven golden age, the highly advanced mind, Atlantis rising, the Lemurian heart resurrecting, the Atlantis mind rising, right? And the Lemurian heart resurrecting, and making this world a better place, make America great again, okay? But first we have to, of course, dive deep into all the tragedies and all these wrongdoings. It's coming to the surface, and we need to know the agenda, who was behind it. Again, I'm dealing with the galactic command. I'm dealing or talking about the negative aliens, right? That all information coming from pretty much Lisa Rainey, but because of my experiences, I immediately connected with the material. She's an advocate for star seeds, right? And she's exposing all these agendas, including Nazism 4.0. Okay, so that's why I'm talking about those kind of things, and it's not easy because it has to do with military, and so we have to be very cautious and very careful. But these experimentations been happening for quite some time, for a very long time. You can even find it in the material of Ashayana, okay, the guardian materials. So important to know that in order for us to evolve, to grow, and to ascend. So as you know, we've been going through all kinds of experimentations, like exposure to chemicals, toxins, heavy metals, and nanotechnology in our bodies, in the environment, and that's what that controllers they want to do. The mind control gene expression in human bioneurology, okay, and that's why they were dumping waste in our water, in our soil, because they know if they damage our environment, those elemental bodies, right, those elements, especially those 4 elements, the earth, water, fire, and air, right? That's how they even damage our DNA. For some reason, right? That's their story, their agenda, their narrative to destroy the divine angelic human race. But at the same time, they're stealing that DNA, right? So it makes zero common sense. That's why the mind control never worked on me, okay? I see things, I see through things, right? All these lies and deceptions and all these mind control and programming, because, being kind of initiated, right, in that in that cult, skull and bones, and especially in that astral plane, even though I'm here in this so-called physical body, but it's a hologram, right? So everything's like a snapshot. You can change your reality immediately, right? What I wanted to say, I know what they're doing behind the scene. It was done to me, right, to be a Marine, and following their agenda and this whole mind control, or being a super soldier, right? And again, if they cannot control you, then they need to get rid of, right, destroy you, right, dispose of you. And they have all kinds of, like I said, devices and mind trackers and sensors, right, because we're dealing with like the experimentations with our genes, with bioneurology, and with all kinds of high tech, right? They're putting it together and creating all these robotics, right? And the DARPA, all kinds of very nefarious activities coming from that institution. So that has to be addressed and put into divine justice, as we're under the Galactic Codex, under the universal laws, following the law of one, right? So again, my mission is especially resurrect those spiritual warriors, indigo warriors, right? My soul tribe who joined military and who were extremely abused and violated, or also part of that mind control monarch, and of that the super soldier, right? And those Marines connected to the negative fleet, right? We need to then resurrect that faction of the military in the Marines of USA with a resurrected Constitution of 1776, right? The teachings, of the true warriors, spiritual warriors, okay? The Great White Brotherhood, and being the Christos Templars. So it means having love and connection and devotion to the divine, to Yeshua and Holy Mother, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene. Yeah. So Semper Fidelis, Spiritus Sanctus, Christos Sophia, Maria Magdalena. Okay. So it means they need a heavy duty deprogramming, right? They need to rewire their subconscious mind. And that's why also I'm talking about the nutrition, right? To heal karma through nutrition, talking about the Ayurveda restaurants, okay, that I'm working on, and especially talking about. So those who are interested in Ayurvedic cooking, yoga lifestyle, and who are spiritual warriors, or who are the star seeds, And so, time to connect, reconnect, reunite, cooperate, communicate, and create something beautiful. Okay, so that's that's how we can help others while helping ourselves. And so this kind of pollution, right, has been largely achieved through the global spraying of chemtrails, and of course together with the injections of genetic modification programs. And we're in a spiritual battle here, and they want to achieve the anti-human transhumanist goals, those controllers. Remember, the thing is, with the material and 3D world, so many people, they want to know who is doing that, and in this physical plane. If you read energies of some of those individuals, or on a soul level and even on their monadic level, so many of them actually were blackmailed. They went through all kinds of trauma-based mind controlled. They ended up there. Of course, they were born in those kind of families. Some of the individuals wanted to escape, right? And so we have to be very careful. That's why those are the galactic warriors who understand energies, right? Especially if you're reading the material of Lisa Renee, it makes now sense. Because I see energies, I know who really still has that loving, beautiful souls, and they're being judged by people because they're involved in those criminal activities, like pedophilia, right? They had to join the club, of Satanists, Luciferians, and they had to join the satanic ritual abuses. So here, we have to work on ourselves. Those are those true spiritual warriors, right? Those and who are able to, so then we can help those who are extremely afflicted by the trauma-based mind control, and who are having a really hard time to even breathe or to feel their divine essence. Okay, so this mind control gene expression is related to consciousness enslavement. And of course, they are experimenting, right? And they are doing all kinds, they're damaging our bioneurology. And they also, they are playing with the electromagnetism. 5G towers. It's not only, we can have a cell phones. No. Some of them are actually psychotronic weapons, right? And I even talk about that plug that's a CV19. And that's why when I talk to my friends, again, New York City, right, they know where the 5G towers are. That's why they were pushed to be vaccinated, right? For the smart cities to be controlled and manipulated. And, there's some very highly, advanced souls, beautiful souls. So again, those who are open, right, those who have eyes to see and, ears to hear, of course, you have to be strong. Right? You have to be really strong to face all that, all these criminal activities that the government, where the shit of government's been doing for quite some time, for a couple of decades, and now, you see what's been done, what is transpiring, and it's not fun. But we have to talk about it and address it. It's extremely important. So here Lisa Renee talks about the DNA, right? Universal language is a blueprint for all life. It's a molecule found in nucleus of every cell. And the mainstream scientists, they talk about the 4 chemical subunits, right? A, T, G, and C. Here Lisa is saying that actually even more nucleic acids can be built if you assemble more of your DNA. But let's stick to the mainstream science here. That's why, people, what the science is saying or what the media is saying, those people don't meditate. Those people, or maybe they do, I don't know, but who meditates? Who is doing the inner work? Who is doing the energy work? Who prays to God really wholeheartedly? Who has the love and devotion to the divine in those places? Like even, the scientists, right? We talk about the science, the academia, the technology, all these pharmaceutical industry, right? The corporations, it's all being hijacked by the controllers. I mean, the cabal is running all these businesses pretty much. And these people, they practice Satanism and Luciferianism and pedophilia and drinking adrenochrome. Yeah, that's the blood from children who've been tortured. That's their lifestyle. And they're running the show here. I mean, they were running the show. That's why now we're changing the guard, the changing of the guards. We're changing the tide, the turning of the tables. Because those who kind of wanted to make the change, like with me with a project back then, a decade ago, we were then tortured, or even like, some of us put into prison, right? Or, we've been persecuted. And of course, I'm sure many starseeds and lightworkers were murdered as well, killed. So it's time to really awaken to those energies. And what is really true? What is really truth? Right? The kingdom of heaven is within. Again, the inner work is extremely important. So metaphysically, guys, these nucleic acids actually correspond to these 4 base elemental substances, right? Within the planetary body, it's the earth, water, fire, and air. The same thing here when I talk about chakras, or when I talk about the endocrine glands. See, you have this physical. Those are like you can see the chakras in a physical plane, right? When you count these, the endocrine glands, there are 7 of them, like 7 chakras. So this is like the metaphysical form of those endocrine glands. You see everything as energy. Here, people, you have to see it, right? Measure it, the scientists. But if the scientists have no idea about energy, right? About chakras or auras or electromagnetic field, then we are stuck in a 3D narrative, or maybe 4D narrative of the science, and we're not going anywhere. That's why very important, you have to be highly evolved soul. And it doesn't matter whether you're a scientist or you're an engineer or you're a biologist or, lawyer, right? We need people like that. The teachers, and we need guides, some Ascension guides now, right? The guardians here, pretty much directing things. So people are educated, and we can finally see the light, see the truth, and what was happening behind the scenes. We have to be educated. We have to be in the know, and in the now. So that's why the negative aliens, right? The negative alien agenda, they instigate mass pollution, toxic dumping on the earth without accountability, because they want to damage the high expression of human DNA. What a thinking, right? I mean, that's the program. I mean, that's how they're programmed. Pretty much mind control is brutal, it's tyranny. They're running the reversals, and they're parasites and vampires. That's why protect your aura, your energy field. I talk about the Ascension Guardian Protocol, right? 12D shielding, okay, invoking the Vat Flame, being in your heart, in your core. Quantum Manifestation Protocol from Marina Jacobi. Now read about nanotechnology, harmonic reactor, right? Detox 101. Or if you want to do, the diet for light workers, that's, I'll talk about in my next workshop next Monday. So what is important? The order of these chemical subunits in the DNA strand holds a code of intelligent information for the cell. So what they do, they're scrambling the DNA, right? So it means people lost and confused. They cannot make sense of themselves, of their lives. It means they're easily being mind controlled, and that's the transhumanist agenda, right? People becoming like robots. So, and that's exactly what it's connected to. With the nanotech of those negative ones, with the graphene oxide, right? Forming the software, the Neuralink. And that's how they are then hooked to the cloud, of the super quantum computers, of those controllers, right? And they're controlled by the negative aliens, right? People are disconnected from God, from source. They have no connection to spirit. Where's your crown chakra? Where's your third eye? Where's your throat chakra? Expressing your truth with loving kindness. Your heart, right? It's also been traumatized. So energy hygiene, healing, sound bath therapy, or some yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, right? Or Qigong, working with energies. So it takes time. It's a process. So the genetic language uses these 4 chemical subunits to write the instruction set on how to make the proteins that the organism or body needs to develop, grow, and live. The smaller segments of DNA are called genes, and each gene holds an instruction set on how to produce a single protein, as well as generate the many messages to instruct the functions of the proteins within the body. So how did we get the spike proteins? Because of, again, the scrambling of the DNA, right? And putting some kind of inorganic artificial mRNA that doesn't even come from this planet. And it was designed by those aliens, right? Negative aliens, by those Greys or Zetas. And the Orion group, the Dracos, the reptilians, the fallen angelics, right? The Anu Elohim, the Anunnaki of the negative faction. So proteins are very important because they build the DNA ladder, and they do all the enzymatic work in the cells that are required for the structure, function, and regulation of the body's tissues and organs. Proteins regulate all of the metabolic reactions in the cell and serve as the enzymes needed to catalyze the body's cellular reactions. Everything that can be seen in a physical biology is either made out of proteins or is the result of functions of those proteins. So that's why they are targeting the immune system, right? The proteins, damaging the bioneurology, our chemistry, our physiology, scrambling the DNA, the true original design of the Christos founder races. Because humans were designed in a very specific way, special way, the best of the best genes. And then you have the invaders, right? Infiltrating the solar system, this planet, and doing all kinds of horrible experimentations on angelic divine humans' DNA. Divine justice, right? Galactic Codex, divine intervention. Everything, is exposed from A to Z. This is not allowed. So one way genetic engineering works is by physically removing a gene from one organism and inserting it into another, giving the organism the potential ability to express the trait encoded by that inserted gene. And now we talk about the gene cloning, right? The gene with desired traits must be coded and copied from thousands of genes that had been collected. The gene cloning. Repetitive gene cloning contributes to genetic mutation. And guess what? It destroys the original DNA imprint. But luckily, right, we have the technology of the good ETs, and they know how to neutralize that. And how to then reassemble itself to its original form, right? Because this destruction cannot continue, because consciousness, right, has the ability to repair itself. Consciousness is consciousness. You cannot destroy consciousness. You can mutate it, right? You can change it. You can pervert it, reverse it, invert it. But the law of balance, again, divine codex, right? You can see the law of balance, right? Everything has to then repair itself. That's why the law of transformation, law of transmutation, right? The law of transcendence. Studying universal laws is very important. It's key for ascension, for education, for self-love, and for the truth. So the new gene clone is called transgene. That's why we have this transgender thing going on, right? And is delivered into the cells of the recipient organism to generate some level of genetic transformation. But it's done, again, by disrespecting the natural laws, the universal laws, because it's done by those Satanists, Luciferians, is done by the negative faction of the Dracos, of the reptilians, of the Anunnaki, right? They're involved in pedophilia, in galactic slave trade, right? And all these mind control. So going back to the God code, going back to the virtues, the values, the morals, spiritual discipline, sadhana, aligning with God's will, God's law, martial art and military. You have to feel your truth, and you have to understand the true history of Earth, of humanity, because so many records ever is being destroyed. But guess what? By activating your DNA, you can start remembering and resurrecting your own divine blueprint and your Akashic records. You can start reading from the Akashic records within you by activating your DNA, being on the sun, doing the inner work, and being then positively polarized, right? And having that loving intention or loving connection, devotion to your higher self, to Source, to God, to Holy Mother, Divine Mother, Divine Parents, Holy Father. So this is what they do with the cloning, right? And now, they develop the next generation of AI hybrid genetic mutations with the introduction of the mRNA nanotech programming using a hydrogel delivery mechanism which hijacks the cell by inserting a foreign operating system that rearranges the instruction sets for making proteins. So they're corrupting this whole DNA instruction set, right? Like how they were corrupting the entire planetary grid network system, right? With all these, with the Nephilim grid, right? With all these reversals, Metatronic reversals. Remember, those are actually 10-dimensional, 11-dimensional entities coming from the Phantom Matrix, right? They have highly advanced technology. So they understand the mechanics of Ascension. They understand the mechanics of the sacred mathematics. They understand sacred geometry, right? I talk about the swastika, right? How people think, oh, swastika, this cross. In originality, it's a wheel of eternal cycle, right? In Buddhism, it means happiness. It's for happiness. It's for peace. It's for joy. Cycle of life. That's the flow of life. Right? The evolution, the ascension, going the Christic spiral. So we are resurrecting those codes so we can resurrect or remember, right, the true meaning of sacred geometry and, of our history and of who we truly are, and start remembering our gifts and talents so we can share with the world and make this world a better place. Create communities with ETs in unity. So that's what they do. Okay. So this genetic engineering is a way to add new traits to the gene pool of an organism using anything in nature from a plant, animal, and a human being. Also what they do, like those Christed codes, they are mixing with those Antichrist codes. So there are all kinds of horrible experimentations, and also mixing genes of animals with genes of humans. Lord have mercy, right? You don't do those kind of things. If you study natural laws, universal laws, you cannot mix love with cold, right? Like love and hate, right? We talk about these energies, like everything has polarity. It's like a one thing, but of opposite poles and with different degrees. Right? That's why we call this love or semi-love, and now really, oh, I hate you now, right? But you don't mix love with, oh, now this is cold, oh, this is a little bit warmer, or lukewarm, now it's really getting really, really warm and hot, 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 right? You have to, that's why it's important to purify your mind. You see what this is all about, the structure, right? The common sense. So that's why when I was targeted so much, these, whatever the entities, they make zero common sense. But how come they have so much control? Because through the highly advanced technology, but they're abducting me, or they're using my DNA, they're stealing my energy, right? Siphoning energy from my chakras, aura, then they're harnessing it, right? Perverting, reversing it, and then I've been attacked, but it's my energy. They stole it because those are black hole entities. They are parasites, they are vampires. Right? That's why I talk about, the 3 hearts meditation, unity meditation, guys, connecting to your Holy Father or Holy Mother, right? Divine Parents, connecting to Mother Earth. So overcome the base 10 mathematics, the reversals, and going to the you know, how we were designed, the universal time matrix, you know, the tree of life, 12 tree grid, the 12 spheres of, that's how consciousness travels through dimensions, right? Those dimensional spheres for exploration, for consciousness expansion, right? For adventure. This is a journey. We're on a journey, hero's journey. And this is the structure, the architecture with instruction sets, how the energy flows in a correct way. Christic spiral, right? Christic way. But those guys, the negative ones, right? They cut this off, and reversed everything and perverted everything and inverted it, right? Playing with sacred geometry in a negative way. So, right, no thank you. So, and the more genetic engineering the human body has endured to be spliced with multiple other species such as black hole entities, the more the body loses its ability to activate original DNA. We talk about when the damage is more than 70%. The return back to God, to source, is through implosion, right? With no memory being recalled. So since World War II, there has been a major revolution in regard to militarization approach to warfare as a result of the major world governments making contact with negative aliens who introduced to them advanced technologies in exchange for access to human genetics, breeding programs, and earth resources. During this phase of setting up covert military programs to experiment with these alien-based advanced technologies, it became common knowledge in the secret intelligence factions that human brainwaves and behavior can be influenced or controlled through exposures to light and sound or electromagnetic frequencies. That's why the 5G towers, right? And the psychotronic weapons. And all these wars going on in Middle East because of the Golden Eagle grid, right? That they hijacked for mind control, MK Ultra. Certain electromagnetic exposures are invisible and can change the way the brain processes information while influencing specific conditions in the mind and body, many times without the person's awareness. Where is the informed consent? They are breaking the natural laws like crazy, you know, the negative ones, okay? So they cannot do this anymore. So, and they've been informed, so it is what it is. The methods used to approach warfare against enemies change rapidly towards total control over humanity's biological processes through combinations of exposure to a spectrum of electromagnetic fields. Through targeting the human brain and bioneurology, the mind, body, and soul can be manipulated to control thoughts and emotions, transmit suggestions, interfere with long and short-term memory, insert images, run audio and sensory experiences, and take control over automatic and voluntary functions of the body. So they're playing with us like puppets, right? We're their slaves. And like people play video games, right? The same thing, you know, we have the all kinds of nanobots, right, in us, all these horrible chemicals and so on. So we're like the puppets for them. They're playing computer games through their super quantum computers, you know, satellites in those dark fleets. They have a spaceship, spacecrafts, right? And we're driving a car. What is this all about? And the price of the gas is rising. And we can have levitating cars, right? The Ashta Command, right? They were also here in 50s. But unfortunately, the agreement with those dark ones was, there was a treaty with the negative ones was signed. But I'm sure it was behind the back of Dwight Eisenhower, because he even warned about the danger of the military-industrial complex. But his third eye was already hijacked. Again, if people were reading energies, if you read energies, you would see there's everybody who is supposed to be in power, like president, congressman, right, and military, high-ranking military officers, they all been compromised, unless you're of the negative faction, right? They all been compromised, mind-controlled, digressed, perverted, right? Drinking adrenochrome instead of distilled water. So, you know, the Galactics know everything. So I work with the Ashtra Command, right? The High Command. With the benevolent ETs, the extraterrestrials. So The goal is to confuse or destroy the organic signals that normally keep the mind and body in a state of balance and equilibrium, while shutting down the genetic switches that are responsible for DNA signaling in the human body. So the earliest stages of development in these electromagnetic technologies were used to perform research and experiments on soldiers to increase their performance in battle while using the same methods to destroy their enemies. So you see, that technology can be used for both, either to heal, right, advance, or to harm and destroy. So who is in charge of those technologies, right? Both the good ETs and bad aliens, they have that kind of technology. But you see the destruction, devastation, if it's the abuse and misuse of those highly advanced technologies. You know what it does. I can see it here. We're in, I'm like in Eastern Europe here, in 80s. Yeah, 30 years ago. People shopping, shop till you drop, look at the food, the fast food, how people live, what they say, how they talk, all this partying and drinking. I can see it even, at work. My boss, people are not growing, they're not expanding if you don't do the inner work, spiritual work, if you're not dedicated to Ascension and, to Christ. So the Department of Defense used hundreds of thousands of military personnel and human experiments for intentional exposure to dangerous and lethal substances, right? Kathy O'Brien, she talks about it in her, Trance, that movie, her documentary. It's all about that. Thus, a new class of militarized weapons based on the electromagnetic field was added to the military complex. In the mid-1950s, there was a battle between these intelligence factions for total control over these hidden technologies and for the destructive use of waging a silent mind war against the global population in order to achieve world domination slavery. Not like, there is a Cold War between Russia and USA. No. There was the creation of the ICC, right? The Interplanetary Conglomerates Corporations. Just totally misusing, abusing their power and authority. Right? That's all going to divine justice with the Galactic Codex. So this was backed by the negative aliens. So you have the controller groups, remember, in this visible realm. But don't forget, some of them are nothing but a puppet of those negative aliens. Do you have the book here? Right? Do I have this beautiful Dracos here? Well, they're not beautiful, but whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. Right? Some people see them, some people don't, right? Those in the military, they are dealing with all kinds of entities, right? The grace, those are the grace. But of course you have good ETs, so we are dealing with the benevolent ETs, right? And here from Telos, okay? I talk about the 5D protocol, people from Telos, right? The remnants of Lemuria. So, do I have the books here? All right, Telos. That's the revelations of the new Lemuria. We're resurrecting all these energies. People live in peace, harmony with nature, with animals, with each other. And they have highly advanced technology, spaceships, spacecrafts, and they're a family. There's a portal underneath Mount Shasta, California. So all about raising the frequency, vibration, intention, right? Making this world a better place, being of service. So I have the Ascension Guardian Protocol, okay? There's just an example. It's my creation, how to ascend and go to the next octave. Harmonic Universe, number 2, right? Soul connection, consciousness expansion, living in peace, harmony, unity, equality, Christos Sophia consciousness. This is the harmonic universe number 1, the ego, right? The personality, 1, 2, 3 chakra, right? Then you have the harmonic universe number 2, 4, 5, 6 chakra. I talk about it, right? So that's where we're heading. And of course, we come from higher dimensions. So working on your heart chakra, throat chakra, and your third eye. right? And of course, when you invoke the Vat Flame, you can actually release all the negativity from the entire, energy field, right? You can resurrect those energies, and that's what the resurrection means for me. I am the life, I'm the resurrection. I remember who I am that I am, and it is what it is, and so be it. So this was backed by the negative aliens to split these warmongering cabal factions into smaller compartments, which they could better control through divide and conquer psychological warfare. So you see, there are all these military factions. They're even fighting amongst each other, right? All about conquer and divide, and so on. So I guess they don't even know what peace is. So maybe they want to see the consequences of their actions, right? They are accepting the Galactic Codex, right? Maybe time for them to learn how to find the peace that is within. So this infiltration by the NA led to the targeting of civilian populations by the human military, which began to use deliberate deception, mind control weapons in order to get the effects that the intelligence operations desired, as in brainwashing. The use of light and sound to stimulate brain waves can be used to modify and change a person's brain activity, thought processes, and behavior in a relatively short period of time. What is little understood is that this can also be used to alter the natural function of DNA signaling in the human body, turning on and off genetic switches in the human body. The strength it takes to gain control over our mental function is similar to the strength required to build the muscles in our bodies. So one way is to going to the gym, look at me, look at my muscles. You want to balance it with meditation, going deep within into your heart, call upon your soul, blend with your soul, right? We have the practice of the evolving self in that 5D protocol. You can find it on my website, yanakalai.com. So obviously, these techniques to gain control over the mind can be used in productive and healthy ways to help heal the brainwave patterns. That's why we have the good ETs for that. Or they can be used in destructive and harmful ways that fracture the mind and the soul. Negative aliens, right? The controller groups, right? The master raider races, right? Those who infiltrate, they're running the reversals from the Phantom Matrix and Visa Matrix. In mind control, he who controls the mind also controls the soul. That's the source of electromagnetic energy and consciousness of that person. As a result, the world governments engage in extensive programs of unethical human experimentation in order to develop technological warfare methods for controlling human behavior and disrupting the thought patterns of humanity for many covert purposes. By overriding the natural rhythm of the brain patterns and brain waves, chemical reactions are triggered which alter the mental and emotional state of the population. This use is a form of Pavlovian classical conditioning in order to shape learned behavior so that more people easily accept mind control, broadcast, and social engineering methods like learned helplessness and all or nothing thinking. So, and of course, we have here also the electromagnetic fields, right? The brain response, the frequency following response. So, when the brain locks onto an external signal coming from the environment and the neurons begin to mirror that signal, that's the frequency following response, right? In order to impact, manipulate the human consciousness. So the signal can be a carrier wave in a spectrum of frequency that is designed to create feelings of distress or trigger emotional pain. Do you feel sometimes when you're outside, especially I'm close to 5G tower and suddenly, I get like these attacks. It's like a taser thing and it lowers your frequency vibration. And you were in a state of joy and ecstasy. And here we go now dealing with anxiety, depression because of the psychotronic weapon, 5G, that I didn't sign for, I didn't vote it for. Where's the informed consent, right? So that's why we also need to get together and, hey, these 5G towers, they need to be turned off or changed into Tesla towers for free energy, right? And let me see, the quantum financial system, right? Those who have humanitarian projects, okay? So those who are ready to make the change, right? Because freeing ourselves from the Phantom Matrix, we also We deserve abundance. Again, Galactic Codex, yanakalai.com. You can find it on the Credo for the New Earth Jurisdiction, right? Or the Galactic Codex, right? We have the right for spiritual and material abundance, right to ascend, right to meet our star family, galactic family, star, to know the history, to know the true history, and the right for all information. We have the right to be free and sovereign. No more misery, suffering, and torture. That's the programming, the agenda of the negative ones, right? The pestilence programming, the Armageddon. No, thank you. So, and so that's what they do. They're just playing with us. So as a result, the brain chemistry alters and changes, generally plummeting the person's consciousness into a range of lower negative emotions with confused and fragmenting perceptions. That's what the negative wants, right? And then, oh, I'm suing you, and you are suing me, and all these division and divide and conquer, and the cabal is laughing at us. Right? Oh, this insurance, I have to have that insurance, I have to pay for this lawyer, and I have to bring the justice here, and look what that person did to me. Really? You got 5G around, you got cell phones going on, you got even those new cars, they're all weaponized. Your DNA now has been weaponized. Expanding your consciousness, it's time to learn those things, understand those things, okay? Large populations can be sent broadcast frequencies that are designed to incite agitation, aggression, or anxiety in specific demographic areas. That's why you have to learn how to meditate, how to calm down, light a candle, incense stick, right? Go to nature, pray and meditate. Walk in those energies of love and faith and trust and grace and gratitude, and be compassionate. So when the controllers may put out, then the controllers may put out news feeds in the mainstream media to incite fear, blame, and promote sensationalism, victimization language in order to single out certain marginalized groups for the intentional targeting. So this is the divide and conquer psychological warfare strategy, so that humans will perceive other humans as the enemy, thereby inciting violence, rape, hostility, and criminal activities. And it's exactly, you guys, that's transpiring in the physical world, and you see all these criminals, the arrest and so on. But look what some of them are actually nice, very sensitive, delicate souls, and look what was done to them. So we have to look at the energy spectrum as well. We have to really see it from above. That's what we have to, be responsible, have the context with ETs. Enlightened context, we are going back to the Emerald Order. And we have to expand our mind, purify our mind, and be devoted to our mission, to our purpose. We're really here to serve, right? And for some of us, it's really to sacrifice to be here and be of service 100%. So it is possible to modulate signals on any electromagnetic carrier for transmitting a message into the brain to alter chemistry, insert thought forms, and instigate behaviors for shaping or grooming that person to carry out harmful or criminal action. Electromagnetic fields act as modulators of molecule-based information transfer. They can intercept and modify the processes of molecular interaction within a human body in any kind of organism. So as an example, the molecular information transfer of the nucleic acids in human DNA can be altered, modified, or reversed when exposed to programmable broadcasts of electromagnetic fields, such as with ELFs. As a result, electromagnetic fields can be used to control genetic switches or influence biochemical pathways, and are capable of eliciting a range of effects inside a living organism, as well as in controlled environments or something taking place outside of living organisms. Exposures to electromagnetism affect organisms in both negative and positive ways that are related to psychological processes, and their reaction is also connected to the genetic configuration and the consciousness level of the organism. The organism that has the lowest range of consciousness perception is generally the most impacted from the impulses coming from the unconscious mind. This is another example of how electromagnetic fields can be used for genetic engineering or modification purposes by interfering with the bioneurology and the body's natural biological system of information flow and transfer between DNA, RNA, and proteins. So when we have a better comprehension of how mind control is used in everyday mainstream media to produce divide and conquer belief systems, we can better discern the agenda and refuse to participate with it. And the antidote to mind control broadcast is connecting with your inner self, your inner Christ, developing your spiritual self each and every day with higher emotional qualities like empathy, compassion. That's why no more judgment, no more criticism, right? We have to learn that transformation of the negative ego, right? The 3D mind. And really genuinely care about what happens to the people and to the planet. So we have to take care of ourselves, right? When the cup is full, we can be out there and be of service. Hope I inspire you today. Many blessings and namaste. Bye-bye.